Hi, this is Miss Linton, and this is lunchtime, and I have some AP biologists here. And we are going to discuss Unit 1 in preparation for our final. If I was going to talk about, I'm going to come back to this. If I was going to talk about strategy for finals, what I would do, first of all, is I would first figure out overall what are my weakest chapters and what are my strongest chapters, right? What did I feel the most comfortable with? You could use things like, well, what could you use to decide if it's weak or strong? You can use unit test scores to know whole units whether they're weak or strong. And then quiz scores, if you have them, over the individual quizzes decide weak or strong. You're going to want to have a quick peek at everything, right? But you only have so many minutes in the day and so many days before your final. So you want to hone in, right, just to those areas that are your weakest areas. And which part comes first, the essay part of the final or the multiple choice part of the final? Essay. How does one prepare for an essay final? By just reading the essays you prepared for? No, by what? Right. You have a finite amount of essays that I've given you. We have already reviewed every single one of the essays that could be possible essay questions, right? So the first thing I said is, what's the first thing I said that you should probably do when you get ready for the final? Yeah, so find out where you're strong and where you're weak and focus on the weak areas, right? Okay. And then number 2, okay, you have 2 parts to your final. You have the essay part, and that's next week, right? And then you have the multiple choice part. Yes, do you agree with that? Okay. So for the essay part, you already have all potential essays. I've given them to you. We have reviews about them. They're on YouTube channel, right? You have the list of them. So yes?
Are you going to do a Unit 4 essay review, or should we just go based on
No, I will do a Unit 4 essay review. Thank you for bringing that up, and I will do that.
Because I don't think it's on the calendar, so
I will do that. Yes, absolutely. Okay, when's our next review? Friday? Today's Wednesday, right? I'm reviewing Friday after school. I will do Unit 4 essays on Friday after school. Okay, and then you'll have them for the weekend. Remind me of that, and I'll actually add it to the calendar too. Okay? If you don't see it pop up on the calendar, then remind me tomorrow in class. Okay, so you have all the you have hopefully written out those essays. So is there benefit to reading them? Absolutely. Go and read those essays that you have done. But then what I would do is I would just have scratch papers. I would look at the question, then I would try and do it. Look at the question and try and do it. If there's any mathematical, chi-square tests, Hardy-Weinberg, you know I'm going to ask you those, right? You know I'm going to ask you those. So practice those. Do those. And, the beauty of the internet now is you can Google practice questions. You can Google answers to essays. You can it's all out there, right? So you can check for your understanding. But again, focus on the ones that you were the weakest on. What chapters did you struggle with? Which part was difficult? Another thing to do is to do things like Venn diagrams, right? How are they unique? How are they the same? Compare and contrast. So when you talk about a inducible operon and a repressible operon, what makes them the same? What makes them different? Those are kinds of questions that I can ask you about as well, okay? Review those essays, but this is the part I didn't get to that point yet, but take out a piece of paper, and you don't have to write it out like in, ands, thes, or whatever, but what I would just get in the habit of doing is just hit the bullet points, okay? I would also be strategic about it. You have, what's today? Today is Wednesday, right? So you have Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to get ready. Are your essays next Friday or next Thursday?
Next Friday.
Next Friday. So you have 9 days, right? And you have so many chapters that are out there, or divided up by units. And say, go today and tomorrow are my unit 1s. That's all I'm focusing on is Unit 1 essays. I'm going to do that tonight. I'm going to do that tomorrow. You don't have to spend 5 hours, but spend some amount of time. Find some minutes and go, I'm going to give this 10 minutes. That's what the mature student does. They spend 10 minutes here and 10 minutes there because they know all those 10 minutes add up to something, right? Okay? So come up with a plan, and sometimes that can be really motivating if you have a plan and a checklist, and you write Unit 1 essays Wednesday night, Unit 1 essays Thursday night, you know, Unit 2 essays Friday, da-da-da-da. Break it up, and you check things off, and it gives you a sense of fulfillment, and you also know you've addressed that issue. Okay? And you're doing it over several nights, so you're not freaking out. As you're preparing for your essays, some of that will reflect to you what you should be concerned about in your multiple choice. Because if your essay part is weak, probably your multiple choice is going to be weak there. You do not have time to study every single multiple choice, every single aspect out there. So you just have to, where can you get the most bang for your buck? The essays focus on that. For the multiple choice, if you had all the time in the world, the strategy that I would go about if I were going to do this, okay, and I would probably anal retentively make a list for each chapter in a spreadsheet because I would spend 30 minutes doing that because I'm a freak, okay? But it would help me in the long run. What I would do, I would skim the book, okay, for each chapter. Each chapter. I don't know what that is. Each chapter, I would skim the book. By skimming the book, that kind of gets me in the right frame of mind. I look at the pictures, and just looking at the pictures reminds me of things. So I don't have to spend 10 minutes reading if I can just look at a picture. And from that one image, I've done a whole bunch of reviewing just by looking at that picture. Looking at bold terms, if I come to a word that's a title of a section in a book and I don't know what that means, I got to go and look at that, right? Okay, so just skim the book. Okay, that's the first thing I do. What do you think the second thing I would do? There's something you've invested in. What have you invested in and spent a lot of time writing? The notes. I would read through those group shared notes. Stuff you know well, read faster. Stuff you don't know well, spend a little more time. If they're good group shared notes, what will you have next to those? You'll have pictures. Again, sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So I'd skim the book, I do the group shared notes. Now, I would probably, then what I would do is I would read the summary. This isn't an ideal world. I'd read the summary at end of chapter. Okay, because that would kind of put it all together. If you don't have time to read through your group shared notes, just skim your group shared notes. And scary stuff, spend more time on it. And it's not all going to be scary. Some stuff's going to be easy, right? Okay, then after I looked at the summary at the end of the chapter, the fourth thing I would do, any guesses? Yes. Oh, no, you're just ready. Yes.
The multiple choice.
I would do the multiple choice. And I wouldn't do all of them. I would do the odds. And when I did those odd multiple choice, I would have an actual piece of paper. I'd write 1, 3, 5, And I would take it like it's a test. I would time it, and I'd give myself 30 seconds per question or something like that. I would give something, I'd put a timer on my phone, and I'd force myself to take it in a short amount of time. So I have to think quick, and I can't dither over it. Also, when you take it quickly, it doesn't seem as hard because it's not enormous. You've said, this is how much time I have to take it, and that's it. That's all I'm giving myself, so I better get it done. You get it done, and then what would I do after I took that multiple choice? I check it. You know what? If I get a pretty good grade on that, I am now checking off that chapter. Done. If I struggled, if I got like a 50% on that, I go back to I would go back to step 1 or, whatever I felt like my weakest area was, go find that in the chapter, and now I have another check for understanding. What's my second check for understanding? Instead of doing the odd ones, I would do the even ones. Okay? That's your ideal world. How long would that take? To skim the book, any chapter, let's say the chapters on average are like 50 pages. I don't know. I'm not reading everything. So how long do you think it would take you to skim a chapter? 5 minutes? What do you think? 5 to 10? Okay. So realistically speaking, let me do a different color. Let me do a different color. This would take maybe 5 to 10 minutes. If you don't have a lot of time, don't take 10 minutes, right? Skim it. Reading through your group shared notes for a chapter. Some of those are really long, right? Now, do you have to memorize everything verbatim in those group shared notes? No. Some of those are just supportive ancillary information to help you with the overall, big ticket items. One way to know what's big ticket, little tip for you, okay, is go to the beginning of a chapter and it will say in there, chapter outline, introduction to AP Bio. Okay, great. Big idea, big idea. Okay, so let me pick a different one. Let me pick a different chapter okay. Chapter outline, organic molecules, 3.1. Okay, what's an organic? And this is in Unit 1. Organic molecules are anything that have what in them? Carbon. Complex carbon molecules, okay? Then it starts going into carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. I better have a good understanding about those, but I'm going to back that up and I'm going to go, okay, so if I have organic molecules, okay, I know a couple things. I know they're made of carbon. What are some other things I know about organic molecules? There are small little monomers, right? I know about that. And I know I can take monomers and join them to another monomer, and I can get a what? Polymer. Okay? I'm bringing that up because in my mind, I remember we learned things about that, right? What is it called when we join them together? Dehydration synthesis. So I would go, okay, dehydration, yeah, I take two monomers, I can, take two monosaccharides, I can make a disaccharide, right? So then I'd go, okay, I know how to do that. Dehydration synthesis, I remove water, I removed an H from one and a OH from another, and I joined them together. The opposite of that is called what? Hydrolysis, hydrolysis. I add water and I break them apart. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Great, okay, I got that. Okay, so I remember that part, dehydration synthesis, and what was the other one called? Hydrolysis. Okay, I know monomers, I know polymers. Okay, then the next part of that chapter says carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. Those are the big ticket items right here. They're listed at the beginning. So if I don't have time to skim the whole book, I think that's a good idea. If I don't have time to do the whole group shared notes, do a modification of that and go, okay, carbohydrates. So let's break that down. That sounds to me like a chart, right? Charts help me know things, right? So if I say the polymer is carbs, what was our other polymer?
Nucleic.
Okay, nucleic acids. What else?
Amino acids.
Proteins. What was another one? Right? So here I know some carbohydrates. If this is the polymer, what's the monomer? What are carbs built out of? Monosaccharides. What's another name for those? Sugars. Do I remember what those sugars are? Glucose. It's in a lot of them. What else? Galactose. And what's another one? Fructose. Those are the three monomers, right? Then we took that one step and we said we know about disaccharides, right? Glucose plus glucose gave us maltose. Glucose plus fructose gave us sucrose. Glucose plus galactose gave us lactose. Those were disaccharides. Then we looked at big things. We looked, and they had two big categories. What were their two big categories? What? Oh, cellulose is one of them. But remember we said energy or structure. Do you remember that? Okay. So I go, okay. So it could either be, I'm going to divide this up here. It could be energy or it could be structure. So you gave me one, cellulose. Cellulose is a structural carbohydrate, right? Found where? Plant cell walls. Good. Okay. Fungal cell walls is chitin. Do you remember that? Okay. Do you remember that part? And then we said energy, we had things like what? Starch. What else did we have? Those were in plants. What else? Glycogen. Glycogen. Right? So when I think carbohydrates, I think, that's that. Now, what's another way I could have gone about it? I could have looked at my notes. You know we made a honkin' chart with this and pictures, and I made a chart for you. It's all digital. Remember that? So you could study that. But do you see how it's more difficult to pull it out of my head? And now, when some people in the room were going, what? Structural, what? Okay? You find your holes. Then when you know where your holes are, then you know what to what? Review. Right? Analyze your weakest part. Because if I just read it, I don't know what I'm good at. So try to pull from your brain, then go fill in your gaps. I will tell you, you only need to look at this one time, that chart, after you've tried to make the chart yourself. Look at it one time and move on. Right? I could have one essay question over it. Sure, I could. I might have 2 multiple choice questions over it. Yeah, I could. That's a possibility. You're never quite sure what I'm going to pull out from that. But I can't spend 2 hours on this one chart. Do you hear me? That'll drive you crazy. You don't have enough minutes in the day to do that kind of study, right? So what you want to do is look at the book, look at those things and go carbohydrates. Then I can quickly flip to the book. I can see, oh yeah, I remember pictures about that. I can look at my group share notes. I remember pictures about that. And then I can go on and take those multiple choice tests and see where my gap is. So you could go back, this strategy right here, depending on how much time you have, you may vary what you do here. That was super good cat-like reflexes, right? If you don't have as much time, then maybe what you're going to do is you're just going to skim the book and you're just going to look at these headings at the front, and then you're going to go right for the multiple choice questions. And if you really stink at it, then you're going to hit all 4 of these. If you're doing pretty good on that multiple choice, then you're going to go on from it. Okay? And then do it with a purpose and go through each one. Do not allow yourself to just spend, nobody should be spending, an hour on one. How many chapters have we learned?
17 now. We're going to learn 19.
Okay, so 19 chapters will be in your wheelhouse. If you have 19 chapters and you spend an hour on each chapter, how many hours is that? 19. If you have 10 days to do that, right, then that would be like 2 hours a day just for AP Bio. Is that even possible? Probably not with most of your schedules. It's not, right? You have other stuff to do. Could you do it? Yes. Could you kill yourself over it? Sure. I don't mean literally. I meant figuratively with time, right? I understand your compulsion. I'm not saying it's good. By the time my whole family left my house last night, it was 9:30ish, 9:40. Took a shower. I started doing work. It was like 10. I stayed up till about midnight, And I was working on stuff. And I'm like, this isn't healthy. Okay? Can I do that night after night? I know some of you do that. It's not good, right? You got to make sure you're sleeping. Okay? So the thing, remember, that you have that comes first is the essay. So when I do this, right, hit those chapters, but then I'd be looking at any kind of essays that are related to it and reviewing those. All of those should be on your fingertips right now. All of those should be on your fingertips because you've already written them. You knew they were going to show up for your final, so you should have access to all of this. If I just read somebody else's essays, okay, because I didn't have time to read it, and I say, oh, bestie, will you let me read your essays? And she loves me, so she says, okay, all right. If all I do is read her essays, there's no ownership over it because I didn't construct that essay. I just read somebody else's, okay? And you could just read a book and find that out too. You need to construct them in your mind. So hopefully you've written all of your own essays. Yes?
Just out of curiosity, on the back of each chapter, there's like one essay question?
Yes, review
Is
it.
that beneficial to do?
Sure, absolutely. Anything that you ask your brain to do to recall this information is good, okay? But you're scientists. I need you to go about it scientifically. I would rather you got a good look at all the chapters and reminded yourself of a few things than only looked at 4 chapters really well, okay? Because when we're all done, we're going to know a lot of chapters. They're going to ask you, 68, 60 or so multiple choice questions and then a few math questions. 60 over everything you know this entire year. Okay? That's cray-cray. 8 essays over everything you've done this entire year. You don't know what they're going to pick. You have no idea. That's why you want to have a good understanding of everything, okay, on that. So come up with a plan. I said today is Unit 1 review, but really I'm just telling you how to study for your final, okay? Because we can go through it. I have it right here. Here's the list of Unit 1, right? But more importantly is, between tonight and tomorrow, I want you to tackle Unit 1. Maybe you divide it like this, right? Tonight, I'm going to do Unit 1, and I'm going to look over basic chemistry. I'm going to remind myself. I'm going to think, what's an atom? Structure of an atom, protons, neutrons, and electrons, right? The only reason I have chemistry is so you know how atoms interact to form what? Molecules. Well, what kind of things hold atoms together? What 2 bonds?
Covalent and ionic.
Yeah, covalent and ionic. Covalent bonds, they share. Why do they share? They're trying to get stable and happy. How do you get happy? You fill your outermost energy level, or you get it up to 8. Okay? Well, sometimes when we fill our outermost energy level, or we try to, sometimes we don't share fair. What's that called? Or ionic is super unfair. I agree with you on that. It's like super, super unfair, as in I own it and you don't. Okay? But when you share unfair, what's that called? Polar covalent. We look at where does polar covalent really come to play. Polar covalent, there's one molecule that's really prevalent in our bodies. It's most of our body. It's what? Water. Okay? So you could spend forever talking about the different kinds of bonds and all of that, but really what I'm really concerned about is water. Because water right here, that's a polar covalent bond, and oxygen holds on to the electrons more tightly. So that makes the hydrogens partially positive, and it makes the oxygen partially negative. You get a whole, that you don't care if you're looking at one water molecule, but you do care if you're looking at millions of water molecules, right? Most of the water in all of our cells is called bound water. It means that oxygen and that hydrogen are oriented in a specific way around that particular molecule. That's bound water. And that's going to influence things. And we know about traits or things or properties of water due to those that polar covalent bond, right? What are some things we know about water that we learned about in chapter 2? Cohesion and adhesion. When does that become important? It's really important if you are a great big tall tree. Yeah, because one water molecule is hooked to another water molecule and they're all holding hands. And so if the water evaporates out the open stomata, then it's going to pull it up, right? And because they're connected to each other and they're doing adhesion along the xylem walls. So that is an important thing to know, right? That's a property. What else is something important we learned about? Yeah?
I just have a quick question about adhesion. If the oxygen is partly negative, then can it only bind to something that's partly positive?
Yes.
With the adhesion?
That's why if you have something nonpolar, like if you take 2 test tubes, or not test tubes, but graduated cylinders, one's plastic, one's glass, you'll have that more distinct meniscus in glass because glass can be polar, right? It's a polar, it's attractive to polar surfaces, whereas plastic is not, right? So that can impact it. Yeah. Okay, so what's another property of water? Surface tension. But you only really care if that, like if you're a sailor or you're a water strider. Give me another one. I'm sure there's other ones, I'm simplifying it. What? High heat capacity. It can hold a lot of heat. Well, when does that become important? It can hold a lot of heat and it can release it slowly. It can help mediate the Earth's temperatures, right? Also our own bodies, we can hold that heat, it's not gonna fluctuate. Perfect, thank you so much. Nails. I'm like, what is he bringing me? That doesn't look like anything good to eat. I'm really disappointed. I'm like, are those boxes of chocolate? No, I needed these for a lab. I don't have nails. Dang it, that was so disappointing. Okay, so high heat capacity, right? We can hold that heat, or we can store heat, or we can transfer the heat in our bodies and cool ourselves off, right? We talked about that. It's not like it changes really fast. It's not like it fluctuates really quickly. What did we talk about ice?
It's less dense.
It's less dense. Okay, what am I trying to show you in this review? I'm trying to show you, look at the big ticket items. Why is this important to me? You know, what big ticket items did we talk about? I don't expect you to memorize the bonding capacity of every element on the periodic table. I definitely taught you some trends, right? When we talked about periodicity, when we talked about periods and groups, what do we know periods are? The vertical or the horizontal?
Oh, wait,
Horizontal. Remember that? When you're on your period, you want to lay down, right? And they're in the same energy level, right? Okay, so we said there's 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, 2-4, right? Okay, same energy level, but what's really interesting is not the period, but the groups. Because all the elements in that group are going to behave the same. Why? Same valence electrons, and it's the number of valence electrons that determine your properties. That's what's important out there. That's what I want you to walk away with. You know, that's the big ticket item. So you could go through that chart. Oh, I know what else in chapter 1, because I kind of skipped over that, because this is what you're going to work on 1 and 2. View of life. We learned about things like scientific method, right? Do you think that's an important thing as a scientist I want you to know? Yes. Have I asked you all kinds of lab questions in the past where I asked you how would you set this experiment up? Yes. So what's something else you could study when you're going through these chapters? Any what that's related to them? Labs. You have notebook presentations that are related to them. You have your own lab books that are related to them. So I suggest to you, and if she is my best friend because she gave me all of her essays to look at, I would, with her, strategize. How are we going to accomplish? When are we going to accomplish it by? And she can hold me what? Yeah, I'll give you my essays. But let me tell you, Winnie Litton, I want to know that you studied chapters 1 and 2 tonight. And tomorrow night, I'm going to text you. You know, when I have to grade your essays or labs, I have a girlfriend I literally text, I finished period 1. And she goes, good job. Start on period 3. Okay. But because I know she's waiting to hear from me, what does that help me to do? To do it. You find yourself a friend. You develop a plan, and you get that A. All right? I love you very much. Have a good class. Hope that was helpful.